On this episode, we interview Oliver Ackermann, co-producer on the Netflix series The Serpent.
So if you want to know just how much work goes into filming a major production here in Bangkok, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 as a clueless backpacker. And after the topic of this week's show, I am very glad I didn't come 25 years earlier.
No doubt. And I met Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 20 years ago. Fell in love with worrying about torrential downpours instead of snowstorms. So I never left. We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we followed up last week's story about a former government minister obsessed with pubic hair. Some news on how Thai people are getting vaccinated in other countries, and a discussion about a new Facebook page that is helping Thailand's demoralized youth find new opportunities overseas. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
I'm so glad my memory of the minister talking about pubic hair was vindicated by my discovery of that story.
You were vindicated. You're slightly less creepy than we thought, Greg.
Thanks. Cool. That's all I wanted. All right, to this week's show. If you are at all interested in Bangkok and or watch Netflix, you've probably heard of or seen the 8-part BBC miniseries called The Serpent that came out in April this year on Netflix. If you're unfamiliar with it, it tells the true story of Charles Sobhraj, a serial killer who moved between Bangkok, Hong Kong, India, and Nepal, murdering backpackers and travelers in the 1970s, stealing their identities and money along with his French-Canadian wife. The series was filmed on location, most of it here in Bangkok, and so we thought it would be fun to talk to someone by the name of Oliver Ackermann, one of the producers of The Serpent. Oliver is based here in Thailand and has worked on such titles as The Hangover Part 2 and 3, as well as a ton of other productions from countries around the world that have filmed in Thailand. So we wanted to hear from Oliver what it takes to get a huge project like The Serpent off the ground, get it going in Bangkok, and see it all the way to completion, and what he and his team had to do to recreate Bangkok of the 1970s in 2021 and in the middle of a global pandemic. So here is our conversation with Oliver Ackermann. All right, Oliver. Well, we've met over the years a couple of times, but they're lost in the haze of time and hard to remember exactly when or where. But welcome officially to the Bangkok Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Where are you right now? Are you in Bangkok right now?
Yeah. I'm in my house in Bangkok. Yeah. You can't really get out at the moment, right? We are all stuck in Bangkok.
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's even difficult to get out in Bangkok if you want to have any amount of fun, but.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
It's not the right time for fun. It's the right time to sit at home, watch Netflix, and drink wine, I think.
That's right. Sit at home and watch The Serpent.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Good segue, Ed, because that's what we wanted to talk about. Now, this show was number one on Netflix when it came out around the world, but you were one of the local co-producers on the production, right?
Yeah, that's true. The production company in London, they contacted us, I believe, in 2018. And, I have a company here together with a few friends, my partners, called Living Films. And we were basically hired as the local service company. The film, they couldn't decide in the beginning if they wanted Malaysia or Thailand. But then again, the show is, of course, set in Thailand. So I think they made the right choice of bringing it here. So we were kind of on this since 2018. So in the beginning, kind of my role was kind of a double role, because on the one hand, I'm the well, I'm the representative of Living Films of the service company. And as that, I think it's my job, to make sure that we have a successful production in Thailand. So it's all about, finding the locations, hiring the Thai cast, setting up the whole production, hiring all the Thai crew and so on. And then as a co-producer, they wanted me to have a creative role as well, to be involved in, because I'm the only one, I guess, that, I was actually in Thailand in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
So I remember Bangkok at that time. I arrived in 79, so not exactly at the point the show plays, but just a few years later. So it was really great for me because you start thinking about that. You start remembering all these things that I haven't thought in for ages. It was very fun to do. It was very fun to have that role in the show. And basically, we used my old photo albums.
Oh, cool.
To look at what Thailand looked like. I'm an embassy kid, so I also kind of know that world very well. So, the Nippenberg world. And so I think, I had a little bit of influence on what we're showing and how we're doing things because I knew what that world looked like. It was kind of romantic for me. I don't know. It was kind of was very nice to be able to do that.
Well, let me say this. Obviously, the series as a whole is getting a lot of praise, but I would say the thing it's getting praised for most is actually the recreation of 1970s Thailand. Like that seems to be the universal thing that everyone is just. You guys did an incredible job.
Thank you so much.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling what you guys did.
So let's walk through that then. So when BBC or whoever the production company has contacted Living Films and contacted you and said, okay, we've settled on Bangkok, what is your job? And walk us through how you get this thing off the ground.
Well, I think the job always starts with alleviating all the fears that people have when they travel to a country with a production, with a big production like this, and they don't really know the lay of the land. And it's weird that Thailand is, I think, the production hub in Southeast Asia. I mean, it's the place to make movies and commercials and all that. But it's still a bit of seems to be still a little bit of a like secret knowledge because there's so many people who are deadly afraid of coming here. Now, Mammoth, they've shot in Malaysia, so they've been to this part of the world, but they hadn't produced in Bangkok, and they were, understandably a bit nervous about it. They hadn't worked with Living Films before. They heard some good things, but they weren't that sure. So, I mean, the first thing always is to make people, give them the confidence that they made the right choice, because trust, I think, is the very basis of this relationship. Because in the end, you put the whole production into our hands, basically. We have a big responsibility when a production comes, and we need to be able to, to fulfill all the expectations. Or if the expectations are unfulfillable, give them the right expectations. So that process normally starts with budgeting and sending location presentations, which are based on our database. Over the years, Living Films is now almost 25 years old. I think we're very close to that. So we have a big location database, and so we read the script, we pick out some pictures, and give people, a feeling. Okay, this is really a good place to go, and this is the right company to work with.
Right.
Then they send out a line producer that I met with a number of times. And we had a lot of work to do on the budget because, the number that we had to hit kept changing, which is also kind of normal, So, but that's the very beginning. And the show pushed a few times because they were never quite ready. So I think we pushed actually 3 times. Okay. We always had a date. I had a crew. And then the show was pushed again. So we spent, I think I worked on the show for over 2 years. I think,
oh, wow.
In the end. And then, of course, a lot of that is pre-planning, It's like making sure we have it all. So when they finally came, when they finally made it and everything was put together and they could actually come here, we knew each other very well already. So we had spent so much time kind of discussing this.
Nice.
So when they hit the ground, it was actually really nice to have everybody here.
The series it's set in Thailand mainly, but it's also, there's some scenes in Nepal and things like that. So was that all shot in Thailand?
Yes. I think really, I would say 98% of the series was shot in Thailand. We had a little bit of a problem because at the very end, we had one more week to shoot. And I was afraid that the country was going to close the borders and the people wouldn't get out. So we pulled the plug 1 week before we were actually supposed to wrap. And I got everybody out, I think, 1 day before the flight stopped. I was very stressed at that point, because people would have been stuck here for months if we hadn't done that. So that was like, if I'm thinking about it now, it was a really good decision. At that moment, I didn't know that. And we all didn't know that. Are we making the right choice? A big deal, not to finish shooting. And there was a plan to shoot the exteriors and some of the interiors that were set in France and Europe, which they ended up shooting in. They wanted to shoot them in Prague, but that wasn't possible. So they ended up shooting them in England. But everything else is Thailand.
When you were meeting with your line producer counterpart, did you go through the script and did it say anything like, the police meet at the police skyscraper? And you're like, that has to change. Do you go through the script and sort of make, cross out things that aren't realistic or wouldn't be?
Yes, we did that. I mean, you also have to see that there's a little bit of censorship for foreign movies in Thailand. So you just can't show everything. And a script like this that is so intimately involved with the Thai police, you have to be a bit careful. Well, it is in the film now. There is quite it shows corruption in Thailand, basically, and it shows corruption within the police force, and that's not an easy sell at all. We actually toned that down quite a bit. I think now it's more visual. It's not really spoken about. I have to watch the scene again, but so it's not so much in the script. You actually just see you see it through the editing of that the police is actually paid off. So
it's funny. I wanted to ask about that. I think I know the answer, but just for our listeners. So all of your productions that you do in Thailand, you have to submit scripts to the Thai government. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's an entity called the Thai Film Board, which we have to submit scripts to. We have to apply for a film permit in Thailand. I must say, we have such a long-standing relationship with them that it's normally quite a pleasant process. So it's not but it's always hard if scripts criticize Thai government entities, and so criticizing the Thai police is not a thing that is that easily done, and you have to. I think it's the best way to do it is just don't be outspoken about it. Do it. Tell your story through the pictures, and then you can get around a lot of the restrictions. And the Thai Film Board understands, but they have to. Our script, I think it goes to 17 different government agencies. And actually, our biggest problem on the Serpent was the portrayal of the diplomats.
Really?
They didn't have that much problem. We toned down the police corruption, but then they really had a problem because the Dutch ambassador doesn't come off as the nicest man.
No, he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, he's a bit of a jerk, and they were really concerned about that. And they, in the beginning, they're like, "Can we really? This is isn't this an unfriendly act against our good friends, the Dutch?" Huh. They were really concerned about that. I think we managed to convince them that the Dutch won't mind. There are a few little elements that I think I really contributed. I mean, it's, for instance, there's a scene in the movie where they're watching like shadow play, where they're watching this Thai form of theater, basically, with these figures, these leather cutout figures that puppets that they play behind like a white sheet. And that was something that I experienced in Bangkok in the 70s. And originally in the play, it was like a Thai boxing match. And I've shot that, I think, for every single movie that I've done here that is set in Thailand. And so I really lobbied for doing something else. It's like, can we please? There's so much more to Thai culture and so many elements that people might really not seen. And I think that show how diverse this country is. What there's so many elements to Thailand that aren't in people's heads when they write their script. So I was so happy that they said yes to that. Finding these little things where we can show Thailand so much in the richness it really has. So I think
right. That's great.
So let's talk about some of the locations then. A big part of the movie takes place at the apartment where Charles Sobhraj, the main character, lives and where he drugged a lot of his victims. It was called Kanit House, but apparently it doesn't exist anymore. So how did you find a substitute and how did you prep it for shooting?
The actual Kanit House was in the Silom area, I believe, and that's long gone.
Right.
But we needed to find something that matched, that matched the script. So that allowed us, and we looked at a few places, and this building in Soinana was the only one that would do it. And
Sukhumvit Soi 4, right?
Yeah. It was actually not an easy feat because the 70s or 60s, I mean, it's like 60s apartment block, there are not that many left. And then if the ones that are left are either, like fully renovated and rented out, and it's very hard to get in there. And Kanit House also needed the special relationship between the apartments and the pool. So, so you could have this interaction between people standing on the balcony and people being down at the pool. So we needed a very special configuration. It's pretty run down. They wanted to rip it down. To be very honest, I'm not sure that if they have done that yet or not. I tried to convince the owner to keep it because it just needs a good renovation job. It's actually quite a beautiful apartment block, and then it was very run down. I mean, the pool wasn't working. The whole pool area was the garden next to the pool. All that wasn't it. That was full of mattresses. I think the garden and stuff like that. So we actually went in there, and renovated the pool, tiled the whole area there, made it look like it was probably supposed to look when the building was, in a good state. And, when you do that, it turns out to be quite a beautiful place, I think. I mean, I thought it was architecturally interesting. It's a great place.
I was going to ask the script, was it based on one particular source? Or I think I read that there's actually been a bunch of other films about this guy. So what do you know what the source material was?
Well, Herman Nippenberg, they were very, they did a lot of work together with the actual Herman Nippenberg.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Oh, and he actually came to visit us. So I got to meet him, which was which was nice. So I think that's basically, it's their main source, but they had more than that. They talked to a lot of people who were involved. They talked to the police officer who ran the case here in Thailand.
Oh.
They did, I mean, it is what the British do wonderfully, right? This period pieces, they take them so seriously. I was very impressed. They did so much research in figuring this out, and I think all the people who were involved in this, who were are happy with the production. I mean, I've heard that everybody's excited about how well it turned out and how close it comes to the truth.
I had never heard of this guy. Greg, had you heard of Charles Sobhraj? I had never heard of him before.
No idea. Never heard the name before.
But man, he is super creepy. I mean, I think the actor, you and I were talking about it. I mean, he plays it in a very understated way, but damn, he's creepy.
Yeah, at first I was watching it and I'm like this guy's supposed to be this like scary part. He was very understated and very sort of sad.
Very low
he was
key.
a quiet guy that sat in the back of the room. But by the end of the series, you're like, damn, this guy's a creepy weirdo.
He's scary. I mean, and Taha did such a great job in playing him. I mean, I thought the cast was amazing anyway. It's this relatively young cast, a lot of, the Dutch actors and so on. And it was quite an intellectual. I mean, the actors were all quite intellectual. They all took this. There were these long discussions about, what in which traditions people saw themselves and how they would approach this role. And the couple that played, the Dutch couple, they were fresh from film school. This was their first big thing that they did. And I'm so excited for them that this did so well.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, cool.
They did a great job.
So speaking of the talent, then, I mean, how do you ease them into Bangkok? Because I've worked with I've worked on film sets. I went to film school back in the day, and I've worked with a lot of people on film sets, and a lot of the talent, not a lot, but sometimes you get talent that's used to being protected and coddled a little bit and taken well care of, and then they fly them into a place like Bangkok, which is hot and weird and confusing. How do you sort of orient them to their new job here for the however many weeks they're going to be here?
I mean, I think it's very much some people travel well, others don't. That's always an issue, and that is not only actors. You know, it's that's true. That's a general truth. I think that some people will do really well, and others won't do so well. I think the problem here was very much the 1970s wardrobe and the wigs and so on. That well, Bangkok is super hot, and then you wear these nylon clothes and
Right.
and wigs. You simply, I mean, they suffered. I know that they suffered, but they were all really committed. I think they did relatively well with Bangkok, all of them. I mean, you can't really ease them into it, to be honest. I mean, there's not that much you can do. You know, they stayed in a nice, you get them a nice hotel. You try to make sure that they have a place where they feel comfortable, for the stay, and then we always have like a cast minder that helps with finding restaurants and shops and make sure that they get what they need. They get the comforts too. I think that's also one of the big problems. I think that for a few days, any place in the world is exciting and interesting, but for such a long show, I mean, the original plan was 105 days of shooting. That's a long time, and it's it's full on. I mean, this wasn't an easy shoot. We were like moving every day. You shoot 5 pages, 6 pages a day. So it was a grueling schedule. And so you have to make sure people have their creature comforts, that the things that they need to feel well are there. And it's hard on the cast. Then most of them are relatively young. So, you start missing your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your family, all that. It's not so easy for them. I think they did great overall. I think it's sometimes harder for the people that are not on every day. The main cast, they're so busy, I don't think they really have time to think. It's like they are working full on. But for those people that are on only every now and then, I think it can be hard. It can be lonely too. Over time, I've just understood it a lot better because, you're putting your face and your whole body out there. You are basically carrying that story. Nobody sees us, but you see them. And so feeling well and being able to deliver the best job, it's really, really important. And that's not always so easy in a foreign, if you're in a foreign country.
I think we're talking a lot about the cast too, but I think as someone who has seen how a film set works behind the scenes, the people that don't get enough credit, I think, is the crew, the guys that lift the heavy equipment and move the lights around and deal with, running to get an apple box or whatever. It is a hard, physically exhausting job. And running around in Thailand, these guys are superstars. And Thailand is well known to have some of the top crews in the world.
I think we have great crew, and really. This was crewed mainly by Thai people. I mean, there were some people who came in, but overall, the foreign crew was very small. So the Thai crew did most of it. I think we have some of the best crews in the world, to be honest. I think they're so hardworking. And it's so funny because people come here and they're really nervous. And then when they go, they want to steal our crew and take them, take them with them. And I always have to put a foot down. No, you say you don't do that. Leave them here with us. We come back. It's like our gaffers and the camera assistants. I mean, every single time the DOPs want to take them with them for some other show.
I have a question that I think a lot of people will have after seeing the show, and the question is, where did you get all those old cars?
Yes,
it's incredible. It's incredible. How did you do that?
I think one thing you have to know is Bangkok is like a magic box for filmmakers. There is so much here, and the deeper you dig, the more you find. I mean, I can just say, we've for a commercial many years ago, we shot Bangkok for Moscow. There is a location. And we had snow, but that of course was a special effect. But
right.
You can find basically anything we're looking for. That's always there somehow. And these these cars from the 70s, they are actually relatively hard to find, because they're not really considered old timers. People aren't attached as much. There are these cars from the 50s that everybody loves, or from the 40s and 20s and so on.
Right.
But the 70 cars are actually relatively hard to find. But because of the weather here, they don't really corrode that much. You don't have the same problem as you have in cold countries where they put the salt on the street, that corrodes the cars. So they're there. Right. And we had an incredible picture vehicle department. They just kept digging, They kept digging, and they found one thing after the next. In Thailand, it's not like, there is a place that has all these cars for movies, and you just call them and they bring them to you. You need to know the collectors, and you need to know private people, and these people that have cars like this, they talk to each other. So once you have one, you keep pulling that string, you keep pulling, and then one by one, the others come. So I don't think it's not an easy job. And the good thing is, because it was Thailand for Thailand, I mean, we've done some other shows. We've done a show for the Weinstein Company called Shanghai, where that's set in China, and also set in the 40s, so earlier than that, where it was relatively difficult because the cars in Thailand are Japanese and German mostly. So you don't find, so the high-end cars are German, but you don't find like a lot of British cars or French cars or American cars. And so on the Shanghai show, we struggled much more because China had a different, historically they had different cars there, which were harder to find. We managed that too. But, Bangkok really, also when it comes to locations, never say we don't have that. We probably do. We just need to find it.
I think people would be really surprised to learn just how many productions are filmed here. Like you said, Bangkok for Moscow or Bangkok for London or whatever it is. For instance, you just finished filming, your company Living Films just finished filming a big Marvel television series, a new Miss Marvel show, which was filmed here, but probably doesn't take place in Bangkok.
It's set in, I think I'm allowed to say that it's set in Pakistan. So it's set in an Asian country, but Asia is very diverse, and even on our show with Nepal and India and Greece and I don't know what everything we have in there, you do have to search for it. I think we did a pretty good job on the landscapes, but Thailand is very tropical, and shooting it for Afghanistan is not that easy. We looked for a long time, and we found this big stone quarry in outside of Bangkok that we shot the bus drive through Afghanistan through, because what we really don't have, we don't have dry, desiccated landscapes. Everything is verdant and green, and deserts are the hardest thing to find. But you find alternatives. And I think it worked really well. It was nice to see how well that actually worked. India, I think, is easier because landscape-wise, it's closer, and of course, the Himalayas are of course not that easy to find. we don't have those, but of course there is CGI. So Kashmir actually turns out to be a lake in Kanchanaburi. And the mountains are CGI, but it works well, doesn't it? I mean, I think it sells it. I think
I wouldn't even know.
Also, on a show this long, on a feature film, you make a one-line schedule, and if nothing dramatic happens, that's your schedule. That's what you're doing. But if you're shooting 105 days, when you start, not all the scripts are done. You're not even absolutely sure what you're going to do on day 80, and that puts a lot of the planning. You can only always plan so far. Your tech scout, one of the, classical things before you start shooting is you go to all the locations with all the technical crew and you discuss all the technical issues. So, from where the base camp is going to be to you need a crane and you need to cover that, and we need a green screen here, and whatever you need. And so on a show like this, the tech scout only covers the first 20 days or something like that, and then you're
Right.
flying wild and free after. There are lots of challenges actually, and it's the longest show, because I said we don't get that many TV shows here like this. It's so for me it was the longest show I've ever done.
All right. Well, as we're starting to wrapping up now, I wanted to ask you what one or two elements of the final product turned out way better than you thought it would. Is there anything you're particularly proud of when you watch the final project?
My baby is the production. So and that is something, well, the audience doesn't really see, but producing and shooting the film, it's its own little piece of art, getting it all right.
Yeah.
And so for me, when rap is done, so when I finish rap and when I say hand it all over to the editors and all that is my first moment where I feel satisfaction, where I'm like, we got it done, we are on budget, we are on schedule. It looked beautiful. All the elements that we contributed worked and did their job as they should. Then when I see it, I need some distance, because the first time I watch it, I only see, oh yeah, my God, on that day, I don't know, one of the actors was sick and we had one of the generators didn't work and stuff like that. Or so I remember all the problems. So the first, I need to see this 2 times so that the second time I can actually enjoy the story. The first time I'm just, it's like walking down memory lane, because for every scene I have like a story in my head.
Oliver, every review is mentioning the quality of the production and the art design. Like every single review is like, it's the 70s, it's like you guys definitely did your job. There's no doubt. Well, besides asking about the cars, I wanted to ask about the cigarettes. Were those original?
Dude, yeah.
Were those original 1970s cigarettes? Did you have
cigarette budget on this thing must have been huge. Everyone is smoking all the time.
Well, you can't do that anymore, right? It has become such a no for anybody smoking any real cigarette on a set. So these are herbal cigarettes.
Oh, so they're herbal. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. I didn't even know that. I did not know that.
And it's not those kind of herbal cigarettes. They're herbal cigarettes that are produced exactly for this, for movie making. We had to import them. We had to import them, and that's what people are smoking, because a real cigarette
would have killed you if you smoked that much.
Right.
Yeah. Take 42, smoke another cigarette.
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, Oliver, before we go, we give our $5 and above patrons the heads up of future guests, and we ask them if they have any questions. And we have a couple quick questions for you. Our friend Terry asks, he said, although it was great to see lots of real Thai spoken in the show for a change, in my experience, Thai police don't tend to speak great English and were presumably even less likely to in the 70s. Was the level of fluency in the officers portrayed in the show historically accurate as per the real characters, or a dramatic conceit for the audience's benefit?
So the police officer who was on the case was actually, I believe, educated in Europe. So he spoke English very well, the real character.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Otherwise, of course, people spoke less English in the 70s. That's for sure. Bangkok was a much less international place than it is now. So, yes. So the answer is it's partially correct, I would say. That's partially correct.
All right.
Interesting.
And the second question from Grant, he said, what is the history of the house they used for Knipperberg's residence in Bangkok? It's a beautiful place and assume it's an original Thai residence or hotel, and I assume it's also not located in central Bangkok.
Well, the Knippenberg house. Okay. The Knippenberg house stands on a compound that has 5 or 6 old wooden houses and is now mainly used for shooting. So if you want, it's a little studio that's mainly Thai shows go there. And so the owners collected a few houses. There's actually a really grandiose 3-story wooden house there from the 1920s that is mind-blowingly beautiful, but that would have placed it was too big for what Nippenberg wanted to do, what Nippenberg could have afforded. And I think we had a discussion about the house, because I think what we did here is we made it maybe a little bit more romantic than it would have been real, is my impression. So we had, I think, as somebody working for the embassy, he would probably have had a little house on Sukhumvit. I mean, as the third secretary, he would have had a house, something small on Sukhumvit, and probably more Western than this house was. But I always think, and I hope my creative counterparts agreed, that in a historic show, you also want the romance of a bit of sepia here, because I think for people, they want to think themselves into the time that their parents lived or their grandparents lived, and, for the younger generation. And you need a little bit of this brush of romance. You need to add this little bit. And I thought this house really sold, like, emotionally, the idea of, in the 70s, traveling to this exotic location far away and working there and being in this house that is, open air and beautiful and so on. I think realistically, he would have probably lived in something much more concrete-y than that. But I thought it was a great choice because I think it works emotionally really well. Right. And when they're sitting there and have, I don't know, in the evening, and the maid comes and it's open air and you hear the crickets and stuff like that.
It's lovely.
Yeah, it's kind of exotic.
Is this compound in Bangkok or outside Bangkok?
It's a little bit outside. It's about an hour drive from Bangkok.
All right, Oliver, I think, we've taken enough of your time. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. It's a great achievement that you and your team have done. And, continued success with all the future projects. And listeners out there, next time you see a show that takes place in South or Southeast Asia, and it looks awesome, you will probably in the credits see Oliver's name and or Living Films in some capacity, because they do great work.
For sure. Thanks, Oliver.
Yeah, thank you so much. So kind. It was fun to do this. I hope this was interesting for your listeners.
I think so too. I think it's mandatory viewing for anyone who is interested in Bangkok. And if you haven't seen it yet, listeners, The Serpent, it's on Netflix. It's an 8-part series, and it's really, really cool.
Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Oliver.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Wadee Cup.
Dude, I really enjoyed that. It's been a while since I've seen Oliver, and he's such a nice guy, and he's the perfect example of the interesting expat. Which I believe. As you know, I'm pro expat. And it's just there's just so many interesting expats doing cool stuff, and Oliver's one of them.
Yeah, he's got a great story, and of course, like we said in the interview, he lived here in the 70s, although he was pretty young, but. So he's got a pretty good pedigree to bring something like this to life. And, you've worked on film sets, I've worked on film sets, and, not everyone knows how hard it is to make something like that, especially in a place as chaotic as Bangkok and dealing with all of the red tape and cultural issues and stuff like this, telling a sort of a globe spanning story. So it was just a massive undertaking.
I got to say this about The Serpent. In terms of its production quality, which relates to what Oliver's responsibilities, it's really good, man. I know we talked about it in the interview, but I was surprised when I started watching it. I expected it to be good. It's on Netflix. It's made by or the local producers are people I know, and I know they're really good. But man, it looks great. Yeah,
it's fantastic. A really, really vivid sense of time and place. And way more than just the bell bottoms, like everyone smokes, like we talked about, and the cars. Like imagine what it must be like to I want to film on this street, and then we're going to need to get rid of all the cars, everything digital,
street signs. Yeah.
So it's really cool to hear from Oliver, and many thanks for coming on the show, Oliver. But great insight into Bangkok's film industry. And I didn't, people might not know how many international productions film here, because the crews here are really good, and Bangkok has just got such a varied landscape, and so like a lot of productions will be here, like this is New Delhi, or this is London, or this is Bulgaria, but it's actually Bangkok because it's such a great place to film.
Yeah, and this was one of many pleasant surprises, since I've lived here. I had no idea that Thailand was this film destination, but it is.
Yeah, it's awesome. So thanks again, Oliver. That's cool. If you haven't seen The Serpent, check it out. It's really cool. I really liked it. I thought it started quite slow, but I think it got better as it went along. And there's some creepy parts of it.
I think it's good. I think the lead actor is understated,
Yeah,
but successfully creepy.
Yeah.
You know, he's not like a scene chewer. There's nothing over the top. It's very low key.
Yeah.
And so at first I was like, I didn't kind of get it. I'm like, what's the appeal of this guy? But then I think it works. Like it's just the guy has this quiet confidence that apparently was attractive to other people, but it's also creepy.
Yeah.
You know?
All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with. That's where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. So last time I asked Ed what he thought about overly tight hotel bed sheets. So this week, Ed, it's your turn to ask something of me.
Okay, I'm going to go a little bit silly this week. Cool. I don't know how you could loathe this, but I'll leave it up to you. Okay, I just think these are funny because I just encountered a funny one recently. What's your take on, I don't know what to call them. I guess they're toilet signs or toilet graphics. There seems to be like a Thai penchant for kind of cute or creative symbols that indicate like a woman's bathroom or a male bathroom. Like they do have standard ones, especially if you're in a more international setting or hotel or mall. They're very staid or whatever. But then just around Thailand, there's just kind of funny graphics. Like the graphic for a boy's bathroom will be like a stick figure with a tiny little wee like with urine,
stream of urine.
Yeah, streaming out. Like, and you just wouldn't see that. We wouldn't have that, you know.
Right.
You know, some of them are really funny. So if you want to see some of them, if you just Google Thailand toilet signs, you'll see some funny ones. Like sometimes it'll be like it'll be something telling you not to squat on a regular toilet.
Yeah.
But in the graphic, it'll have like a tiny penis and balls like hanging down.
Yeah.
In the graphic.
I've
like it's just they're very kind of cute, but sometimes they're just more explicit than, because these are public signs.
Right. I would say love on these ones. I mean, come on, let's have a little bit of fun here. It doesn't have to always be so serious.
Yeah, okay, love. I'm gonna go live with it. Sometimes you see these signs and you just can't believe they're true.
They're cute. There's that one of like there's a man in a stall next to a woman in a stall, and the man is like climbing up over top, looking over top of the stall, which is objectively a little bit creepy. But I mean, at least they're trying something new with just a regular.
Wait, but the sign, I take it, is not promoting this?
It says like bathrooms this way, pointing.
Oh, really? I've never seen this one. So I thought you were going to say there was like a strike, like a Ghostbusters X across it, but you're saying that it's a bathroom sign of a guy peeking
no
over?
No Ghostbusters from what I can see.
Oh my God. I've never seen that one.
No?
But that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like, basically these signs are borderline inappropriate.
Yes, they are.
But there's something about them, like there's just this Thai innocence about them that makes them kind of charming.
I agree. I love them. So we'll include some of those over to our patrons in the email that gets sent out, including the one that I'm talking about, because I'm just Googling right now and I see it.
Okay. A final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, we do. We're responsible that way. You can also listen to each episode on the YouTube, so you can send us a voicemail, which we'll use on the show online, or you can even reach out to me directly on Twitter or Instagram, where I am KK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you back here next week.
Yes, for sure.
Did you see my tweet about about how I have a lot of work to do before Halloween because I'm playing the most recent God of War on my PlayStation.
I saw that, yeah.
Which is Kratos and his son.
And that's what Kellen wants to be.
Yeah, he wants to go as Kratos and his son for Halloween. And Kratos, of course, is this gigantic, ripped, tattooed, bearded god. I'm like, oh man, I've got like 5 months to get in shape. Other people on Twitter were hopefully saying like, just get like a girdle or buy this like silicone thing that gives you muscles or something.
So funny.